Raisa Joseph alongside the incomparable Michael Gasper.
Yeah, yeah. What I get is when I'm on the broadcast, I get in calls. I hate that.
You're a businessman. You tell me.
No, no, because when you use your phone, it puts you off.
We'll say that in 5 minutes. Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. From him. Hello and welcome to the opening ceremony of the 53rd annual meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank.
So Jason there, when he goes five, it means 5 minutes forward.
Okay.
So you just follow him because
All
I
right.
want you getting from both of us.
Okay.
One
1 minute,
minute.
yes.
How do we create economic opportunities and empower our people? How can these opportunities decrease our vulnerability and increase resilience? How can our countries appropriately develop? And what can we do to ensure access to adequate and affordable financing? Join us in St. Lucia as we shape, create, reinforce, and adopt mechanisms, tools, and policies to marshal the funds necessary for our countries and citizens to thrive. At CDB's 53rd annual meeting, we will focus on sustaining and accelerating development through adequate and affordable financing for our future.
Hello and welcome to the opening ceremony of the 53rd annual meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank. We are live from the Sandals Grand St. Lucian. I am Raisa Joseph alongside the incomparable Michael Gasper and will be today's host, delivering to you in St. Lucian Creole and English. Today's meeting is critical for Caribbean development and we are so glad that you are joining us. Welcome, Michael.
Merci Raissa et bonjour, bienvenue pour le programme spécial qui nous a apporté pour matcher. C'est commencement grand meeting, ça c'est 53e meeting board, ça c'est Banque Développement Caraïbe, là, CDB, qui est établi en Barbade, avec ma meeting, c'est là qu'a fait en Sainte-Lucie, aujourd'hui, et nous avons bienvenu tous ces pays qui ont participé, qui ici, et puis nous, particulièrement ces pays qui ont parlé créole, nous avons dit bienvenue pour ça tous.
Bienvenue tout le monde. Michael, today's meeting is so critical, not just for St. Lucia, but for the entire Caribbean. Our theme focusing on marshalling finance for development, access to adequate and affordable financing. Now, very often we discuss social and development issues, but very often we need financing and resources that enable us to provide the solutions that are possible, and that is what the Caribbean Development Bank has been doing throughout the region. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about our theme?
Exactement. C'est un chaîne peut-être que Raissa a regardé Banque Développement Caraïbe, la Congo institution qui y passe à comprendre. Mais exact ça y a fait c'est pour aider développement Caraïbe là, pour mener de l'eau dans le monde, pour aider en éducation, en santé, avec toutes différentes bagages qui ont poussé développement Caraïbe là. C'est ça Banque Développement Caraïbe là qui a fait. Il a établi depuis 1970 avec il a fait un chai travail en tous ces différents pays Caraïbes là.
Indeed, and what Michael has just highlighted is the fact that the Caribbean Development Bank is rooted in the Sustainable Development Goals of ensuring that we have equitable access to quality lives in the Caribbean. And we note that throughout their period here in St. Lucia and throughout the region too, they focus on a number of key areas: youth development, gender equity, sustainability in agriculture, and a number of other areas. And during our program, we will have the experts come to us and tell us a little bit more about the Caribbean Development Bank. But to segue slightly, Michael, looking at its history and development and this critical moment of leadership, we know that the Caribbean Development Bank has been stewarded by a lot of St. Lucians who have guided it from inception to present. And I'm speaking about none other than the great Sir William Arthur Lewis, who was the bank's first president. Its current president, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leo, is also St. Lucian, and the chairman, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre.
C'est intéressant puisque avec ça on dit là, c'est important puisque Sainte-Lucie a joué un gros rôle en développement Caraïbe. C'est qu'on dit, il commençait en 1970 avec le premier président banque là, c'était Sir William Arthur Lewis, un grand Nobel Sainte-Lucie qui il est passé à présent, mais il vient Nobel, prix Nobel ça là en l'économie. Avec ça veut dire qu'il a fait une grosse contribution pour le développement Caraïbe là, et aussi nous ni chairman ça c'est mon qui a conduit les affaires et bien meeting ça là aujourd'hui c'est premier ministre Sainte-Lucie il même aussi il fait études en l'économie avec nous président Dr. Hyginus Léon en Sainte-Lucie encore alors c'est premier côté pour meeting ça là aujourd'hui.
Michael, coming back to our focus of why this meeting has critical significance, we want to welcome with us in a moment the head of the Corporate Communications Unit at the Caribbean Development Bank, Ms. Camille Taylor. And Ms. Taylor will come on board to let us know why this meeting is really significant for the bank and for the people, because we want to remember that it is more than a financial institution. Welcome, bienvenue.
Thank you.
Is this your first time in St. Lucia, Ms. Camille?
Absolutely not. It's my fourth time, but the point I will make is each time I've visited, it's been for work.
So the fifth time has to be for vacation?
Absolutely, because I look longingly at the sea and at the mountains, and I just want to be here and be free to roam and enjoy the beauty. It is a gorgeous place.
We look forward to welcoming you again.
Thank you.
For the benefit of our viewers, can you tell us why today's meeting, the 53rd meeting, is so significant for the bank and for the people of the Caribbean?
Well, I will start with the historical and sentimental portion of it. Our founding president is Sir William Arthur Lewis, one of St. Lucia's best known sons. And our current president is Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, a son of St. Lucia. And our current chairman is the Honorable Philip Pierre, Prime Minister of St. Lucia. So it's coming full circle and in a sense coming home for the bank because we have a very special connection to St. Lucia. Now, on the administrative side, the meeting of the Board of Governors is the annual meeting once a year. The highest decision-making body in the bank comes together, and we also see it as an occasion to share with the region what we are doing, the work we are doing on their behalf. So we have seminars, we have outreach events, we share the latest research in various aspects of social development, and it really is an occasion, not just for the pomp and ceremony, not just for the administration and management, but also for us to give an account to the people who we really work for.
In terms of some of the key messaging that's going to come out of this opening ceremony, can you give the people a little bit more insight into some key points that they should listen out for that matter to them?
Okay, so our president, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, will give his keynote address as part of the opening ceremony, and he will signal the direction of the bank, certainly for the next 12 to 18 months. And these will be the areas of development that we'll be focusing on. And so the region will get an idea of where the work of the bank is going and how they will benefit the areas where there'll be an impact. You know, we work on infrastructure. I mean, that's a fancy way of saying, you know, road networks, ports, major infrastructure that is of economic importance to countries. But then we also work on social services, healthcare, education, things that people need to access for their own well-being and quality of life. We have a holistic approach, and the president will let everybody know where we're going and how they stand to benefit, not just now, but of course in the future, because that's what sustainability is about.
Planning for future generations, and I could not have seen that better myself. Coming to St. Lucia, I know this is not the first activity that the bank is having during our sojourn here. Can you tell us about the activities that have passed, some of the key areas that are being highlighted by the bank as we talk about infrastructure and port services and healthcare? Can you touch on some other areas that the bank is covering this week?
So we had a seminar which was about access to financing for females. And I hasten to add that we are not leaving the gentlemen out, but this is a target group that has a difficulty accessing financing for economic and commercial ventures. So we actually had a discussion to let policymakers know how to be more flexible for female investors and female business persons. And this is not tycoons or, you know, Bill Gates or even Brianna, our region's own billionaire. This is, you know, women trying to start a small business that need financing and need a push. Somebody that has an idea, maybe working off the veranda, out of their garage, and needs to take it to the next level. So we spoke a bit about that. We had a full week of activities around youth engagement, and I won't go too much into that because my colleague Kimberly Gittins will be on after me, and she will tell you all about that. But the youth continue to be a very important target group for us. Looking forward, though, this evening we have the William G. Demas lecture, which is going to be delivered by the Caribbean's own Simon Steele. He's a Grenadian who is now Executive Secretary of the UN, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, if that isn't too much of a mouthful. But he will be talking to us about climate financing. And you know, we're in the middle of hurricane season now. I'm not even going to elaborate, but climate issues are very important issues. And then on Thursday, our final event will be a forum for indigenous peoples. Very important target group for us, and we have set aside an entire day to engage them.
Well, we have had a full program of activities very relevant to the Caribbean civilization, and as you touched on the lecture this evening, I hope that our viewers can log in as we face El Nino and a number of climate challenges. We know that our intellects will rise to the occasion. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Yes.
Oh, intéressant tout bonnement.
Yes, Camille gave us quite a lot of food for thought to reflect on, because very often we see that meetings are taking place, but we are unaware of what they're trying to do. So let's give a recap for our Creole listeners.
Oui, ça a été dit nous, c'est exactement qui manière Eh bien, qui raison qui banque là établi pour qui ça, qui manière il s'agit de développement différents mondes, différents secteurs. Avec en finissement, il dit nous banque là qui a commencé à mettre plus attention à sa jeunesse. Ça c'est pour écouter ça en simplicité, l'année projet ça nous a créé l'économie jeunesse. Avec il y a engagé jeunesse pour particulièrement pour commencer business avec aussi monde qui ça nous a dit monde qui un pays même monde qu'on c'est Caraïbes là c'est Caraïbes là avec c'est vous savez c'est monde ça là
Premier monde qui vient à pays.
un pays c'est monde ça là pas ni qualité capacité il y a pas qu'à joindre assez avec ça tout au rond la terre particulièrement en Caraïbes là il y a commencé by il plie attention avec ces directions ça là moi quoi banque là il Camille Dino, Bank à présent.
On the point of indigenous people, another significant group that the Caribbean Development Bank is currently focusing on, coincidentally in the year of the youth as declared by the Commonwealth, is young people and youth development. And the Caribbean Development Bank has focused on a number of initiatives aimed at ensuring that our citizens, our youth, our present leaders are empowered. And it's my pleasure at this time to welcome Kimberly Gittins, social analyst from the Caribbean Development Bank. Kimberly, welcome.
Welcome. Sakafet.
Moi, bien, merci. Voilà, et puis Michael, comment vous êtes? Ou bien, merci.
Bien, merci. Bien, merci.
Yeah. Welcome. I'm sure our Bajan brothers and sisters will be very proud of your Creole today.
I'm learning as I go and being taught by the young people across St. Lucia.
We're very happy to hear.
You're doing
Kimberly,
well.
welcome.
Thank you.
Young people are a focus of the Caribbean Development Bank. Our own government of St. Lucia has focused tremendously on youth development, particularly with the youth economy. Can you tell our guests a little bit more about the youth in the Caribbean Development Bank's mandate?
Sure. So the bank was established, as everyone knows, in 1969 and began operations in 1970. A key part of the bank's mission is to ensure harmonious growth and development across its BMCs. And it's impossible to do that with our young people excluded from the development space. And so key to the bank is building resilience across young people in its 19 BMCs.
Okay. So for the benefit of our viewers, BMCs being borrowing member countries.
Indeed.
And we also know that during the course of this week and last week, there were a number of youth-based initiatives. Can you tell us what these initiatives were about and how St. Lucian youth were engaged?
Sure. So we have worked with young people across the region to build out our program of engagement with young people. And they actually determined what the bank's engagement around the Board of Governors should look like. So on day one, we had young leaders, young innovators, and young entrepreneurs from across the region talk about their experiences, talk about the lessons they have learned, and share that with young people from St. Lucia and across the region. We also launched the first cohort of the bank's Future Leaders Network, and that comprises of young representatives between the ages of 18 and 35 across our borrowing member countries, young, energetic, and already engaged. They will work with CDB for a period of 2 years to provide advisory support, so they will help us shape our youth-targeted interventions. They will also advocate in the areas of priority to CDB. There will be innovators identifying issues around economic empowerment so that we can build out a key strategy to integrate our young people more wholesomely, more fulsomely in the economy of our region and in our countries. And they will also coordinate the bank's next youth forum. So there are 4 roles they will play: advisory, advocacy, coordination, and an innovation role as well.
Beautiful.
Yes.
What were some key insights from the young people in terms of the areas that they would like the bank to focus on for sustainable development?
So there are 2 key areas that emerge consistently in our discussions with young people. One is the integration and full participation in economic development, and the second is on peace building. Strategies that are youth-led and community-based that will help combat crime and violence across the region.
Okay. So these are really substantive programs that are far-reaching. They're not just surface level. You're engaging meaningfully in all areas.
Indeed.
I know some persons may not be aware that the Caribbean Development Bank is also integral in developing youth policy. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, and again, we did that with the input from young people across the region, our young leaders, and also youth serving organizations. We have a youth policy with 6 key pillars. One that is externally focused on building capacity in our board member countries, and there are 5 key internal pillars again, including that integration of young people in economic empowerment, peaceful societies, looking at climate change, youth participation in democracy, as well as youth harnessing social capital. So those are the 6 pillars that were developed for the bank's 2020 youth policy and operational strategy in consultation with young people, including young people from St. Lucia.
That's wonderful. We're happy to hear and to see the face of the bank in a new light. Very often we think of banks as simply financial institutions, but this is a development bank that is very rooted in the realities, the challenges, and also the opportunities for the Caribbean.
And our young people asked us to create a space for them at the table, and we have done that in the bank's institutional mechanism, which is our Future Leaders Network.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for giving us these insights. We're going to engage with you a little later on during today's broadcast, but we just want to let our young people know if they're interested in following up on these wonderful initiatives, where would they find information?
You can follow us across a number of social media platforms, and of course, they can reach out to their divisions of youth affairs, their ministries with responsibility for youth development. And those stakeholders there have my direct contact, and I'm always happy to take emails and to respond to young people across the region.
Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me.
Have a productive meeting.
Thank you.
Intéressant, il a parlé créole.
Kapale Koyo, Ekisoti Baba.
Nous te donnons des implications en créole.
Yes,
Mais
sir.
quand même, ça il dit, c'est engagement et puis jeunesse Saint-Lucie. Un pays, en région. Nous avons parlé de tous ces pays qui particulièrement ces pays qui ont prêté l'argent pour aider et bien pour pousser le développement de ces pays. Ça intéressant avec quand il dit il y a des affaires programmes sociaux, c'est ça qui est plus important, et puis engagement et puis c'est jeunesse là, ça intéressant tout bonnement.
Yes, I found what the bank has been doing has been phenomenal. Very often we consider the youth to be future leaders, but they are present leaders, and we need to engage them in building capacity, in finding out what their ideas are, in shaping the kind of Caribbean that we really want to see, because we know citizenship, it really requires a lot of sustainable development and planning for longevity, and they are our legacy, and we're really happy to hear that the Caribbean Development Bank has this full cadre of programming that is meant to build our people. And we note that in the Commonwealth, it's been declared the Year of the Youth. We have made work
c'est vrai.
and progress that we want to continue to see in the youth economy and the inclusion of a lot of individuals. And there are other areas that we want to touch on that the bank is doing. There is so much. I don't even think our time here will really be able to capture all the work of the Caribbean Development Bank.
Il y a aussi mettre attention à ce programme développement commune, c'est commune, ça le cas en anglais. Community Development.
Indeed.
Avec monsieur qui a fini, monsieur Richard Aiken. Monsieur Richard Aiken.
He's a community development specialist.
Spécialiste qui a spécialisé en affaires développement commun avec peut-être il a aidé nous comprendre plus mais travail banque là en qualité bagaille ça là.
Yes, indeed. Welcome, Mr. Aiken.
Hi, good morning. Mabrika.
Mabrika.
Greetings in Kalinago.
Beautiful. So I learned something. So Mabrika.
Mabrika.
So I will learn that. So when I come in, I will say Mabrika.
Certainly.
All right. But in Saint Lucia, we say bienvenue.
Bienvenue.
Wonderful, beautiful. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, wonderful. You are community development specialist with the bank. Tell us about the bank's thrust in terms of building sustainable communities that are empowered.
Right, communities are at the heart of what we do as an organization, and what we try to do is to ensure that for our development interventions, there is great community ownership for products that we design. So in the end, communities would feel as though they have a stake. They will actually be main contributors to the outcome, and then they will preserve whatever investment is made in the space. So we try to implement lessons to see how we could strengthen that local inclusion, collaboration for sustainable development, leaving no one behind.
Very good. In terms of the bank's own research and engagement, what have been the greatest needs of our communities, particularly those of indigenous species?
Right. So at the indigenous community, they focus a lot on their inclusion. So what we're looking at now for this week is our first Indigenous Peoples Forum. And what we're doing is, the thought is that the forum should not just be about the forum. They want to ensure that there's greater ownership. They want to be heard. They want to be a part of our interactions as well. So though we, over 43 years, have been doing quite a bit within these spaces, we are now stepping back and listening to see how we could provide greater inclusion, that our results can be one that is centered around them, that they could see it as theirs, not designed by the bank, but designed by a process of inclusion.
So you was rooted in people-centered visioning
Exactly.
and planning for them. Can you tell us, and for the benefit of our viewers, the indigenous groups throughout the region that we are touching? Because very often there is a lot of invisibility in terms of information about them and even our own historical records.
Right, so we would have touched quite a few countries. Between among the committee members, we would have met maybe over 60 different groupings over the last 3 months. And what we're seeing is the forum becoming having other aspects to it. So there's a research component that would happen post-forum to dig even deeper into their issues. We actually have an Indigenous Peoples exhibition on the outside, and we'll have participants from Suriname, both the Maroons and the Amerindians. We have Dominica, Kalinago, we have Jamaica, the Maroons, we have indigenous people within St. Lucia as well that we're also engaging. So that's the kind of interest that we're trying to promote, where we bring them not just to conversation, but the actions as well. And I think even most important, I would think, is that we're having 3 satellite locations on Thursday, where we'll have people traveling from remote villages in Suriname starting tomorrow to head to Paramaribo, where those Maroons and Amerindians will come together to participate virtually with the forum. We'll have another space in the Kalinago territory at the Century Center. And thirdly, in Belize, we'll have 10 Mayan leaders traveling from tomorrow again to Bella Vista to join us online for that. So even though we're here in St. Lucia, we understand their local dynamics, the distance scenario, but we're bringing people to the forum so that they could be a part of the conversation. Magnificent, they are the ones who are making some of these recommendations, and the bank being flexible, trying to accommodate as best as possible.
This is incredible.
Let me just ask you, is it part of a cultural revival for the Caribbean?
Well, I think yes, and I think CDB being the Caribbean's development bank, we are best placed to start that conversation of inclusion, manifested not just in dialogue, but in action, as will be demonstrated on June 22nd.
Yes. But tell our viewers a little bit more about how they can tune into that very critical discussion, because listening to you, I feel like I need to travel to actually meet and be participating in this forum.
Right, so there'll be an opening session that will broadcast live at 8:30 in the morning. And what we'll do as well, we'll have a number of other sessions that we will be sharing and allowing persons to participate as well. So we definitely share more information, but again, the forum is not just about the forum. So there'll be a number of other opportunities that we could share and continue the dialogue as we seek to empower in a space where this intervention should be mutually beneficial for CDB, but even more importantly,
For the people.
for indigenous people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aiken. You've given us quite a lot to digest and process, new information that I think many Caribbean persons need to know about the work of reaching our very diverse space that is the Caribbean, and taking care of the very first peoples will to ensure that we are alive and here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Mabrika.
Mabrika.
We learned something today.
Yes.
Mabrika.
Expanding our language diversity in a bilingual state.
Exactly.
It's beautiful.
Oui, je suis bien content pour tant exactement ça qui a passé.
One more interview for you. Just keep.
Ok, bien particulièrement ça a été dit nous à sous moun moi regarder pour moi m'a veut dire indigène, mais c'est moun c'est premier c'est moun qui vient en ces pays puisque en chaque délai c'est moun ça là pas qu'à joindre attention yo yo mérité. Et moi bien content que Banque Développement Caraïbes là qu'a changé ça avec aider ces monde là pour pousser le développement ça là. Particulièrement en Dominique, moi après assurer que ces monde là ni territoire yo avec yo ni moi quoi en gouvernement yo ni en place en gouvernement avec ces qualités ces bagages ça là nous quoi nous besoin en Caraïbes là.
When we think about human rights and development, very often we do not think about the indigenous peoples, but if we think about their own historical experience of nearly being annihilated via genocide, I think it's very important that the bank's roots begin with our first peoples. And we like the fact that they're being included in a variety of ways, and the bank is meeting them where they are to empower them. And as you rightfully said, opportunities are necessary for their empowerment, given their experience. I know that, for example, the UE would have provided scholarships in some forms for them to access tertiary-level education. So knowing that the bank is also a partner in ensuring that we do not leave anyone behind in the region is very important to us, and I'm hoping that our viewers can join the broadcast on Wednesday to find out about the Indigenous Peoples Forum and to follow the Caribbean Development Bank on its pages on social media and caribank.org.
Right, malheureusement, moi pas en Suriname et puis Belize où m'a participé en qualité activité ça là. Mais moi apprendre nous ni en l'autre monde qui a venu pour nous parler puis qui le sait.
Yes, let me just take a look at who will be joining us shortly.
Eh bien, pendant temps Raissa qu'a regardé qu'il y a monde qui est venu tout à l'heure nous en Sandals Grand pour 53e meeting quand c'est Banque Développement Caraïbes là, c'est une grosse occasion tout bonnement. Et puis banque nous catane musique police band Saint-Lucie, nous catane chaque monde qui a venu ensemble et qui a préparé. Nous a préparé
Yes,
pour
we're going to be welcoming another distinguished gentleman, Mr. Daniel Bess, on projects within the bank. And we've been able to see a lot of faces that have given us a real understanding behind the bank, behind the logo, behind the finance, to see that we are rooting and rooted and trying to reach people.
L'argent.
Welcome, Mr. Bess.
Hey, good morning, Ray Yusa.
Yes,
I don't want to do
Ray.
violence to your name.
No,
I'm Michael.
That's
Thank you.
right.
Thank you
Welcome.
for having us.
How are you doing?
Absolutely fabulous. I'm in St. Lucia.
Oh,
I'm at the
wonderful.
Helen of the Caribbean.
That's
Yes.
right.
It's not to be
Welcome.
good. Absolutely beautiful to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are an expert in the projects area of the bank's development. Could you tell our viewers a little bit more about what the projects and main focus of the bank are right now?
Sure. I mean, you're very kind to say expert, but I work with a team of experts within the projects department. And within the department, we are responsible for the investment lending of the bank. And we have, a number of areas of focus that are really germane to the development of the region. So the energy sector, for instance, energy, there's water, of course, there's education, there's citizen security, which of course is front and center, there's urban development, there's transportation and the interconnectivity therein. There's agriculture and food security, and seeking to support the CARICOM's agenda for the 25 by 25, reducing the food import bill by 25% by 2025. So we respond, of course, underpinning all of this is gender equality. Underpinning all of this is climate change and how we respond to the climate change, to the climate crisis in the region. Underpinning all of this is the importance of building resilience across the development systems of our region. Yeah, what we're seeking to do really is to transform lives.
And
That's it.
surely you are doing so.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, please.
On the note of climate change, I wanted to know whether or not it has exacerbated particular challenges, for example, in terms of food insecurity and some of the bank's areas of focus that we recognize that there might be more impetus on particular areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the decisions we took as a bank, I want to say maybe about 5 years ago, is that all recipients of CDB financing, any project that CDB finances must undergo a climate risk and vulnerability assessment. So we incorporate climate design into our projects, every project, and even technical assistance, to ensure that what we're doing really is building infrastructure, is supporting systems that are climate resilient. We appreciate the fact that a lot of most of the infrastructure in our region was built for a climate reality that no longer exists. And so how do we design such that years in the future generations of Caribbean people, young people currently growing up and even into the future, will have the infrastructure that will be sustainable. That they don't have to keep building back after every hurricane season. So this is what we do. So for instance, as you mentioned, even in terms of food security, we appreciate the fact that, we encounter periods of severe drought, or we encounter periods of severe flooding, both of which, impact crops. How we have treated with agriculture is in a number of ways. One is, of course, what we call climate smart agriculture. We seek to design our projects to respond more sustainably to the climate conditions. So, for instance, we do projects that incorporate drainage, appropriate drainage, using groundwater where available. Irrigation, using groundwater where available. We use appropriate drainage systems such that crops won't be inundated necessarily with water. So these are things that and also we look at how farmers can utilize modern technologies to increase yield. But also, farmers need to be able to export, or they need to be able to get their produce to market more efficiently. So the interconnection of the transportation systems then become important. But then also, we have certain standards that they have to meet, domestic and international. So the sanitary and phytosanitary conditions need to be in place. So our agro-producers, we seek to support them in getting what they produce to domestic, regional, and international markets. So market penetration becomes very important. Upskilling our agro-producers. These are the areas that we are just certainly in terms of food security as one.
Well,
area.
what it seems like is that the bank is feeding many mouths with one spoon now. In trying to meet all these needs and intersectionality of challenges, what are some major barriers that the bank is trying to leap over to try to ensure that we meet all these needs simultaneously?
Yeah, so one of the big challenges we have in the region, of course, is that of capacity. Yeah, but it is not sufficient as the Caribbean's development bank to just say we have a capacity. We have to do something about it. We are, it's not that the Caribbean is only our home, it's our only home. We don't have another region in the world. So it is our responsibility as the region's development bank to do what is necessary to build capacity across our governments, to create the enabling environment that can mobilize private capital to be part of the development thrust in the region. So this is what we're seeking to train, to upskill our fantastic public servants across the region, but also help them to build systems that can work such that it becomes easier to start a business. It becomes easier to access electricity. It becomes easier. These are the areas that we are actively working in within the what we call the enabling environment, looking at the regulatory functions, looking at the environmental standards that are required to mobilize donor capital into the region.
Very good.
We are an attractive destination. I say it all the time. We live in the best region in the world, and I've seen many parts of the world. And I said unapologetically, the Caribbean is the best part of the world to live. Persons want to come, they want to live, and they want to do business here. How can we make it easier for that to happen? And this is some of the things that we are looking at in terms of supporting procurement systems. So procurement reform within the OECS, of course, is one of the projects that we're quite proud of. Looking at all of these areas is something that we're actively working on.
I am glad you mentioned easier.
Yeah.
How easy it is to access the finance.
Well, so again, this is an area that we continue to work with our countries with. Right? We have highly concessional resources, certainly in some areas, but it's a partnership. It's a partnership. Absolutely, we have systems, we have different thresholds, and we don't tell you this is what you're required to do. Come back to us when you figure it out. Okay. If it isn't ready, if your project isn't fully ready, as a dear friend of mine, the head of the Climate Smart Accelerator, Raquel Moses, says all the time, they're shovel-worthy projects in the region, and they're shovel-ready projects. How do we move projects from being shovel-worthy to being shovel-ready? That is where the development thrust happens. So what we do is, you may not be ready with your project. We will provide technical assistance at concessionary rates to help do the designs, to help look at the environmental conditions. There may be persons that need to be relocated, to support you in doing a resettlement action plan, to provide you with community liaison officers. At the end of the day, we are transforming lives. Development isn't just building the road.
It's building
Development
people.
is building people, Ray. So that's what we're seeking to do here.
On the note of partnership, what can our citizens, our business community, and our civil society do to meet the bank at the bridge that takes us from challenges to opportunities and sustainability?
Great question. Development in the region isn't going to happen without the private sector. It's not going to happen. And we appreciate the fact that the enabling environment may not be fully ready. But we know the private sector has skills that the development community does not have readily. That of deal origination. The private sector comes up with deals like this is what they do. Yeah. So what we are seeking to do is to partner with the private. And we've had some great conversations with commercial lenders, with other private sector players as to what kind of deals we're looking at, what kind of deals the region needs to support the 25 by 25 agenda, for instance. How can you originate those, providing terms that are favorable? Don't expect to get your return on investment all in the first year. You know, the countries don't have the fiscal space to do that. So let's meet halfway. And so it's that partnership that we working with. Civil society is another classic example. We work with civil society in areas such as citizen security. What kind of social systems are required and programs are required to meet the most vulnerable? How can we reach them better? And there's no need to reinvent the wheel in many cases. In civil society, they have the programs in place and they know where their communities are and they know where the gaps are. So we work with them to develop that. You know, you would have spoken to Kimberly Gittins, who has, within our team, who has a network of youth and young people across the region working across them. I think Richardo was just sitting in this chair, who's familiar with the communities. We're working with communities at the community. So we do large scale projects, absolutely, but we also work importantly with the people of the region where they are.
Very often, though, as you rightfully highlighted, persons measure development by physical infrastructure that they actually see. But can you highlight some significant milestones of the bank over the past 53 years, or even in this recent year, of initiatives that are currently undertaken or have been undertaken that you would like the public to know about?
Yeah, I mean, well, we at the end of last year, one I'm particularly proud of, at the end of last year, our board approved our revised energy sector strategy and policy, and we're really stoked about that one because we bring some innovative solutions to our region. We've coined the acronym ASSERT, which stands for Accelerated Sustainable Energy and Resilience Transition. Yeah, so we are supporting the region in driving the energy transition, and within that we have some assertives, just taking the acronym further. Okay, one of them is looking at the regulatory framework, and it was just talking about that at a great meeting we just had with our vice president of operations and the World Bank team, creating minimum regulatory functions within the region, such that to deploy renewable energy resources in the region, to create distributed energy systems in the region, we need a minimum regulatory function, such that our countries know these are the areas and this is what you're required to do, or what you need to do if you want to attract donors, such that project developers know this is what I need to do to move. So we're looking at areas such as the regulatory framework, legal, environmental, institutional, and administrative. Yeah. So within our energy sector policy, that's something that we're quite proud of. And one project to name one, we have developed a project with St. Kitts and Nevis in particular, looking at how they can export their geothermal and resources through something called a contingent recoverable grant. So we provided $15 million in resources to develop the geothermal. Now, if the resource is proven, it converts to a loan because now you're getting a return on it. But if the resource isn't proven, then it remains a grant. So we don't add to the debt burden of the country. It's this kind of innovative
So the
financing.
conditionalities are favorable because we understand the context in which we're operating and our own vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure
It's an
hearing
absolute
from
pleasure
you.
being here, Race.
Wishing
Thank
you a wonderful meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your expertise with
Thank
us.
you,
Although you said you weren't an expert, I am
No,
sure
no,
persons
I'm not.
listening to you would have learned quite a bit.
They just tell me what to say, and they say, Michael, thank you so much. Ray.
Thank you
It's
so
a
much.
pleasure.
It was a
Thank you.
pleasure. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure. It
Thank
was a
you so
pleasure.
much.
Yes,
Good.
a pleasure.
Very, very knowledgeable.
Very knowledgeable.
Man is on top of this game,
Oh, yes.
and he knows.
And the bank has done quite a bit in terms of project development in the region.
Ok. Nous avons nous dit, nous avons préparé pour c'est le gouverneur qui a entré tout à l'heure, yon par yon, il a entré qui a représenté ces différents pays qui membres ces banques là. Avec tout le monde samedi à parler, avec c'est ça nous avons espéré pour lui. Là, il y a entré l'autre dignitaire, j'ai entré en dedans, and perhaps I can say that in English, that we are waiting the arrival of the representatives, the governors of representing the various islands, borrowing countries of the Caribbean Development Bank. So this is what's happening at the moment. Tout le monde s'en a parlé.
Yes. So at this time, we just want to let our viewers know, and those who are just joining us, we are at the opening ceremony of the 53rd annual meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank. Very critical developments to sustainable development of the region, our people, projects, ensuring that our region can access finance. We're marshalling finance for development. But at this time, I want to remind our viewers that they can view our broadcast at MBC and Real FM, the Caribbean Development Bank's social media pages, and also online. We'll be going to a break, but we want you to stay tuned with us. When you return, we enter into our procession and the meat of the matter for today, our keynote addresses from the President of the Bank, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leo, and also the Chairman, the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Philip J. Pierre. Thank you so much for viewing.
Luanalau, Hira Nora, Sweet Helen of the West, our Saint Lucia, pursuing sustainable development to preserve our natural assets and ensure no citizen is left behind. We believe development must be holistic, leading to enhanced social services, increased productivity, and improved infrastructure. This will enable our people to realize their full potential. With partners like the Caribbean Development Bank, we are expanding major roadways, upgrading water supply systems, yet preserving the environment while pursuing progress. We believe economic growth must be coupled with social development, so we are improving healthcare, enhancing education, and providing social safety nets to protect our most vulnerable people. Saint Lucia, promoting holistic, inclusive development to achieve economic growth today without compromising our prospects for tomorrow. Luanalau, Hira Nora, Sweet Helen of the West, our Saint Lucia, rich in culture, beauty, and creativity, unwavering in our commitment to improving the lives of our people. We believe in facilitating economic inclusion for all citizens. Our youth economy is enabling young people to transform creativity into viable commercial activity. We are driving growth in the small business sector by providing funding through the Caribbean Development Bank's MSME Loan and Grant Facility. We are expanding our economy by reducing barriers to entry and ensuring our enterprising citizens have better access to capital and resources. Saint Lucia, affording our people opportunities to make meaningful contributions to our economy, our society, the region, and the world.
Luanalau, Hira Nora, Sweet Helen of the West, our St. Lucia. As a small island developing state, we are vulnerable to the impacts of climate events and natural hazards, and we face impediments in accessing financing to mitigate these effects. To overcome this challenge, we will be among the first countries to issue a blue bond with proceeds to be used to finance projects that increase access to clean water, improve sanitation services, sustainably enhance fisheries, preserve our ocean space, and protect marine life. This can also pave the way for other Caribbean islands to use their oceans as assets to finance climate mitigation and adaptation programs. St. Lucia, safeguarding our precious natural resources, which are the backbone of the national and regional economy. Analau, Hironora, Sweet Helen of the West, our St. Lucia, where our pursuit of sustainable development is not only about building the economy, but also creating social conditions under which our society can thrive. We believe our people deserve a stable society and all citizens should enjoy security and peace of mind. Our social interventions for at-risk groups provide practical guidance and improve skills through education, mentoring, and training in conflict resolution. We are also forging partnerships between government agencies, civil society, and community-based organizations to strengthen immediate support systems and offer socially viable alternatives to vulnerable groups. And we are also modernizing our law enforcement services and justice system to enhance national security and ensure citizen safety. St. Lucia, building our society to ensure our citizens enjoy security and benefit from prosperity.
Luanalau, Hiranora, Sweet Helen of the West, our Saint Lucia, pursuing sustainable development to preserve our natural assets and ensure no citizen is left behind. We believe development must be holistic, leading to enhanced social services, increased productivity, and improved infrastructure. This will enable our people to realize their full potential. With partners like the Caribbean Development Bank, we are expanding major roadways, upgrading water supply systems, yet preserving the environment while pursuing progress. We believe economic growth must be coupled with social development, so we are improving healthcare, enhancing education, and providing social safety nets to protect our most vulnerable people. St. Lucia, promoting holistic, inclusive development to achieve economic growth today without compromising our prospects for tomorrow. Luanalau, Hiranora, Sweet Helen of the West, our Saint Lucia, rich in culture, beauty, and creativity, unwavering in our commitment to improving the lives of our people. We believe in facilitating economic inclusion for all citizens. Our youth economy is enabling young people to transform creativity into viable commercial activity. We are driving growth in the small business sector by providing funding through the Caribbean Development Bank's MSME Loan and Grant Facility. We are expanding our economy by reducing barriers to entry and ensuring our enterprising citizens have better access to capital and resources. St. Lucia, affording our people opportunities to make meaningful contributions to our economy, our society, the region, and the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the opening ceremony of the 53rd annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank.
The CDB and their delegates and guests are in Belle Set-Lycée enjoying the warmth and hospitality of the government and people of St. Lucia.
The annual meeting brings together the bank's highest decision-making body, the Board of Governors. The event provides a forum for discussion about the bank's work and impact across the region, and it also allows CDB to involve a broad cross-section of stakeholders in the mission of driving sustainable development. As has been the custom for the last 53 years, we will begin the proceedings with the procession of the governors.
Leading off the procession are the British Overseas Territories, the Gems of the Northern Caribbean, Anguilla, the Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Montserrat, and last year's host, the Turks and Caicos Islands. Please join in welcoming the Premier of the Virgin Islands and Governor for the British Overseas Territories, the Honourable Natalio Wheatley.
Next, we have the Governor for Antigua and Barbuda, hailing from the land of 365 beaches, one for each day of the year, Ms. Rosanna Davis Crump.
Coming to us from a land of 700 spectacular islands and keys scattered across the Northern Caribbean Sea, next in the procession is the Governor for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the Honourable Michael Halkitis.
They give us the Right Excellent Sir Garfield Sobers and the Right Excellent Rihanna. Please welcome the Governor for Barbados, the Honourable Ryan Strawn.
Next in our procession from the western end of the Caribbean, home to the world's second largest barrier reef, is the Governor for Belize, Dr. Osmond Martinez.
We acknowledge in absentia Brazil, Ms. Renata Vargas Amaral.
Next up, representing the Great White North, the land of maple leaf and countless lakes, the Governor for Canada, Ms. Cheryl Urban.
Our next representative is from a cradle of civilization and a bedrock of modern manufacturing, the Governor for the People's Republic of China, Mr. Liu Mingzhu.
We say bienvenido to the envoy from the country where lofty snow-tipped mountains tower high above the lush equatorial forests, the Governor for Colombia, Ms. Luz Stella Campillo. From the birthplace of some of Europe's most celebrated philosophers, poets, and composers, from Bach to Beethoven, please welcome the Governor for Germany, Dr. Katrin Schroeder.
Representing the Spice Isle and home of Olympic champion Kirani James, Grenada, the Honourable Lennox Andrews.
We welcome now from the land of many waters, the Kaieteur Falls and Fountain of Black Gold, the Governor for Guyana, Dr. Tarak Chand Balgobin.
Entering now from the second oldest independent country in the Americas, the birthplace of Toussaint Louverture, please welcome the Governor for Haiti, Mr. Fitzgerald Louis.
From the Republic, famous for the Renaissance and iconic fine artists such as Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, please welcome the Governor for Italy, Mr. Alberto Simone Peltagna.
Coming to us from the land of Usain Bolt, Bob Marley, and Blue Mountain Coffee, please welcome the Governor for Jamaica, Miss Diane Black. We recognize in absentia the Governor for Mexico, Mr. Rogelio Eduardo Ramirez de la O.
And with us from the Twin Island Federation, a land of magnificent mountains and glorious scenery, is the Governor for St. Kitts and Nevis, Miss Hilary Hazel.
Representing the 32 idyllic islands and keys that make up the nation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, give a warm welcome to Governor the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez.
We acknowledged in absentia the government for Suriname, the Governor for Suriname, Mr. Kamikchand Raghubar Singh.
Coming up next in our procession of governors, from the land of Pan and Calypso, the Governor for Trinidad and Tobago, Miss Marie Hines.
Entering now from the land that gave the world football and cricket, Governor for the United Kingdom, Dr. Christopher Athade.
And now from the land of Simon Bolivar and home of the world's tallest waterfall, the Governor for Venezuela, Ambassador Raul Licausi.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now invite our head table to the stage, starting with General Counsel and Bank Secretary of the CDB, Mrs. Diana Wilson Patrick.
Acting Vice President, Corporate Services, Mr. Philip Brown.
Vice President Operations, Mr. Isaac Solomon.
President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon.
And now from the majestic Twin Peak paradise, a nation that birthed two Nobel laureates, one of whom was Sir William Arthur Lewis, who served as the first president of the Caribbean Development Bank. Please stand for the chairman of the Board of Governors, Prime Minister of the Helen of the West, St. Lucia, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome the arrival of His Excellency, Mr. Cyril Errol Charles, Acting Governor General of St. Lucia, and Her Excellency, Mrs. Anicia Charles.
Please remain standing for the national anthem of St. Lucia.
Please remain standing for the invocation delivered by the Reverend Tui Nuku from the St. Lucian Christian Council.
Let us pray. God Almighty, our Heavenly Father, Creator and Sustainer of all life, we gather today in this special occasion, the 53rd Annual Meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, under the chairmanship of the Honorable Philip Pierre, Prime Minister of St. Lucia. We praise you for this day and for the purpose you have instilled. We invite your presence in our midst and deliberations. We set our agendas as we sit in your presence. God, grant our leaders the serenity to accept the things we cannot change. Grant them the courage to change the things we can and the wisdom to know the difference. Create a spirit of dialogue, fellowship, and neighborly love, that we listen to each other not merely to respond, but to understand. May this occasion have an impact on our region and the world as a whole. May you empower and enable this meeting and the Caribbean Development Bank to marshal finance for the holistic and inclusive development of our region and its island nations, as resources are made available and accessible and affordable to build economic resilience that sustain life for all our citizens without anyone left behind. May the objectives of this deliberation be met in which there is leverage for collective knowledge, innovation, creativity in our Caribbean region that fosters resilience and drive economic diversity and increase the competitive advantage of our countries, that no one is left behind and all can live together in peace and harmony, sharing the limited resources. Give and grant us the spirit of good stewardship, knowing that the world and all that it is in it belongs to you. May you be present. We pray in the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, in the name of Christ Jesus, our Lord. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated.
Good morning once again. Good morning. Wonderful. Before we move to the official meeting agenda, please allow me to acknowledge His Excellency Cyril Errol Charles, Acting Governor General of St. Lucia, and Her Excellency Mrs. Anicia Charles, Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, and Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, and Miss Marie Felix. Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, President of the Caribbean Development Bank, and Miss Brenda Thomas, members of the Cabinet of St. Lucia, members of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, special guest of the CDB, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that is the UNFCCC, Mr. Simon Steele, the management and staff of the CDB, other specially invited guests, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we now turn the proceedings over to the Chairman of the Board of Governors, Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre.
Good morning. Morning, everyone. Your Excellency Cyril Errol Charles, Acting Governor General of St. Lucia, and Excellency Mrs. Anicia Charles, members of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, President of the CDB, members of the Cabinet of St. Lucia, special invited guests and our guest speaker, Mr. Simon Steele, senior management and staff of the Caribbean Development Bank, other special invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and distinct pleasure to welcome delegates and observers to the 53rd annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank. The beautiful island of St. Lucia offers the perfect opportunity for relaxation while you engage in the business of the conference. There are few regional institutions that have served so well and with distinction the common good of the people of this region. I believe this is to be true for its 5 non-regional members and its people, as it is for its 20 regional members. Forgive me for basking in the joy and pride of St. Lucia National's contribution to this institution. This 53-year-old institution was first headed by St. Lucian Nobel laureate Sir William Arthur Lewis during the period 1970 to 1973, and today is headed by another distinguished son of the soil, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon. The CDB remains a source of pride and inspiration for all the people of the Caribbean, and reminds us that within our region, we do have the talent, the dedication, the discipline, and commitment to build strong institutions, to support our respective economies and countries, and to assist in the coordination of developmental programs for our people. Moreover, the CDB has commanded the respect and trust of the international community, supported by its credit ratings as a strong financial institution. I am in no doubt that given the work that has been done by the CDB over the years in improving the socio-economic conditions in member countries, we will all be lesser without it. This meeting is a great opportunity for members to discuss issues that affect the lives of our countries and figure out solutions to improve the lives of our people. I believe the theme of the annual general meeting, Marshalling Finance for Development, Access to Adequate and Affordable Financing, is appropriate, particularly at this time as small island states continually struggle with the task of improving infrastructure while reducing poverty, but they have reduced access to financing as they cope with a false notion of development defined in its present context. The damage caused by COVID-19 persists. While we try to return to pre-pandemic levels of development, we continue to battle with sluggish economic growth, high levels of unemployment, high debt burden, security of citizens' concerns, and supply chain issues worsened by the ongoing war in Ukraine. These global external events continue to affect the lives of our people, particularly with the rise in food prices caused by global inflation. Marshalling financing for development is indeed a huge task, at the time when it has been established that climate change is real, no longer considered a myth or conspiracy. Our region is considered the second most disaster-prone area in the world. Our countries experience a diversity of hazards. Hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, and tropical storms visit our shores regularly, causing extensive damage to physical infrastructure and sometimes nearly wiping out the entire GDP of our countries in loss and damage within mere hours. The once 100-year hurricane could now be once every year. And so, disaster risk reduction, mitigation, building resilience and recovery, which requires substantial financial resources, have all become the top priority action area for the survival of our countries. It is imperative that the region seeks solutions born out of the region that are unique to our circumstances. The need for adequate financing to improve the quality of life for the people of our region. However, the effect on the quality of life of our people by natural disasters are, to me, the critical challenge for policy development makers. Since its establishment 50 years ago, the CDB has served the Caribbean countries well, mobilizing and deploying developmental finance to spur economic growth to improve the lives of our people. However, the challenge at this time, in an environment of rising interest rates and lower than expected world economic growth forecasts, how does the bank find its way to fulfill the demands of its clients as they seek finance for their development? As the theme says, that finance must be affordable and adequate, and allow me to add, accessible and timely. I believe that this challenge is not beyond the capabilities of the CDB or regional thinkers and thought leaders. As a first step, the President has been advocating for the inclusion of recovery adjustment to the matrix in the calculation of our gross national income, the calculus now being used to measure our economic growth. We are aware that the CDB has been developing and advocating the use of the internal resilience and the recovery duration adjuster as a means of determining access to adequate and affordable finance for our vulnerable economies to respond to the climate crisis. Quite rightly, the CDB has aligned itself with the work of the United Nations High-Level Panel on the MVI, recognizing that the timely adoption of the MVI is an important milestone in cementing global recognition of the vulnerability and, by extension, resilience as an important criteria. The climate crisis and the threat we face will not pause or wait until we have a perfect solution. Our development banks must be empowered to act. I'm therefore issuing a call for the CDB to advance the adoption of the MVI as a means of determining access to concessional resources. It follows, therefore, that loss and damage due to natural disasters must be an integral part of the discussion on financing for development, and as an important requirement that, as a first measure, loss and damage clauses to be included in financing packages from donor countries, international financial institutions, and the recipients of these loans. Later this week, countries of CARICOM will seek to advocate for a new financial architecture dubbed the Bridgetown Accord, which in summary seeks debt reduction and forgiveness or lower interest rates for small island developing states for the mobilization of global financial resources. These concessions are necessary due in part to the impact of natural disasters on the people and economies of the small island developing states and the cost of the rebuilding that is necessary after the impact of the frequent natural hazards and disasters. We wish the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, well as she makes the case for our region in France later this year. It is imperative that our regional agenda finds adequate and suitably designed financing mechanisms to build social, economic, and environmental resilience, and also provide the necessary fiscal space to properly respond to climate change-induced disasters, such as hurricanes, droughts, floods, rising sea levels, and rising temperatures that affect our economies with increasing intensity and frequency. Our failure to obtain a suitable tailored financing framework from the national community would mean that our individual and collective ambitions to attain the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals will continue to be severely compromised by the lack of developmental finance. 1 year ago, on accepting the chairmanship of the bank, I committed to promote, among other things, 2 issues of regional importance: social and economic empowerment of youth and access to adequate and affordable financing for development, which has been a priority for the bank over the last few years. I have always focused on finding solutions to the chronic social and economic challenges facing the people of the country, the people of the region, particularly the youth. It was evident from research data that the unemployment rate for persons between 15 and 24 in the region was generally 3 times that of adult unemployment, and the region's youth were bearing a disproportionate share of the burden of poverty, marginalization, and exclusion from the developmental process. In that regard, I initiated measures to create the enabling environment for the youth of St. Lucia to access existing and emerging business opportunities by establishing the Youth Economy Agency to convert hobbies into entrepreneurship and skills into business. The youth economy creates a special space in the economy with the necessary facilitation for youth-owned businesses to start, develop, and grow. Our goal is to harness the skills, hobbies, talents, and innovative capacity of our youth and channel this passion and creativity into successful businesses which can truly transform the lives of our people. In less than 8 weeks, a total of 102 grants have been issued to young entrepreneurs in diverse areas, ranging from agriculture, agro-processing, fashion, ICT, food and beverage. The Youth Economy Agency will this week be graduating 92 young persons following an intensive 3-week business training program. Successful participants will each receive an injection of $5,000 to bring their plans to life. The Youth Economy Agency has already conducted free business mixers at Grocery, Denver, and Library, with Sufre to come later this week. The Youth Economy Agency has also launched its mentorship program, but the most encouraging part is the active linkages that we see young entrepreneurs forming among themselves to support, to procure goods and services from each other. And that was only just one of the objectives of the Youth Economy Agency, already coming to life. Through the youth economy, we're expecting a cadre of young, disciplined, innovative, diligent, committed young entrepreneurs who will develop to become the successful indigenous business persons, forging strategic alliances among themselves while embarking on global and regional partnerships that will expose them to the opportunities in the region and the global marketplace. Our discussions during the course of the annual meeting are more crucial than ever. Our challenges are numerous, but not beyond the imagination, talent, and resourcefulness of our people. I'm convinced that we can continue to build a regional institution that can provide finance for climate changes, reset the debt issue, build capacity, and most importantly, improve the quality of life of the people of the region by providing financing in the areas of education, healthcare, manufacturing, tourism, climate, infrastructure, road and water infrastructure, food and energy security. We must commend the CDB for the support it has provided to St. Lucia and the region to help navigate the difficult social and economic challenges of the COVID pandemic. While the CDB fulfills its mandate, countries must manage their economies to provide the necessary fiscal space to allow for the repayment of debt to the institutions, since the shareholders expect their resources to be used in the most efficient manner. I urge the CDB to remember that there can be no economy without people, and our policies must ensure economic sustainability, but not forgetting the social, health, nutritional, and economic well-being of the people of the region. For in the final analysis, it is the people whom we serve. I wish you a successful AGM and implore you, while in our beautiful island, to let her inspire you. I thank you. I now call on the Governor for Belize to give his response.
I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Acting Governor General, Mr. Errol Charles and Mrs. Charles, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, governors, directors, the President of the Caribbean Development Bank, government representative, development partners, and other distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Firstly, I want to thank our host country, St. Lucia, for the warmth of its people and the generous hospitality, a beautiful and fitting backdrop for the conversations to come. In this vein, I wish to recognize the hard work of the management and staff of the bank. Many times, their hard work and sacrifice goes unnoticed and unrecognized. The tremendous work being done across the region and the work that went into ensuring that this annual meeting is a success is worthy of commendation. I greet you all today on behalf of the Prime Minister of Belize, the Honorable John Briceño, the government, and of course, the citizens of Belize. It is an honor to speak to you all today, not only on behalf of my country, but also on behalf of all our borrowing member countries. As we know, we have much more commonalities binding us than differences. We are stewards of some of the best natural resources that Earth has to offer. We have rich histories that have bred unique cultures. On the other hand, we are also economically vulnerable with multiple significant constraints, and we are highly exposed to the risk of the global arena. In many instances, by standard to phenomena beyond our control. More than anything, though, the greatest thing we share in common is our resilience. Even in the fears of a global pandemic, in the fears of the giant and crude appetite of climate change, in the fears of geopolitical tensions, in the fears of suffocating global inflation, we continue to persevere. Allow me to illustrate that resilience through the lens of Belize, under the leadership of our Prime Minister, the Honorable John Briceño. The government of Belize has accomplished many major milestones, though thought to be impossible given persistent externalities. In the area of macro-level fiscal management, Belize achieved a 65 percentage point reduction in our debt to GDP, down from 133% in 2020 to 64% as of December of 2022. This was largely due to the historic blue bond debt for marine conservation transaction. It allowed us to successfully renegotiate our external commercial debt and resulted in an immediate 12% reduction in our total government debt. In the process, Belize earmarked $4 million annually for marine conservation. In the areas of social protection, Belize have mainstreamed national efforts to develop a comprehensive social protection strategy and are steadily on track toward achieving multidimensional social protection with the unemployment rate at an all-time low of 5%. Belize is among the fastest growing economy in the region, giving international partners and investors restored confidence in our economic productivity. And while I will share more about these notable feats and promises that Belize will continue to ascend on this course, the reality is that if another hurricane will strike tomorrow, or a global pandemic rampage once more, all our progress would likely disappear. The last few hurricanes that impacted Belize contributed to average annual losses of 4% of GDPs and considerably damage to infrastructure and public utilities. Even without a direct hit, flooding in our central districts reached unprecedented levels and left us with an estimated $100 million worth of damage. Hurricane Lisa, a Category 1 storm that hit last November, once again underscored our vulnerability. Though only a Category 1 hurricane, thought to be best case scenario, still require emergency response and left us with considerable damage. This story is not one that only Belize can tell. Every single borrowing member country holds a similar fate. This scenario has become the norm for our region. We know that our progress is only as secure as we are in the face of external shocks. Individually, as countries, we have made great strides in reducing our debt burdens, prioritizing climate action, building our disaster risk reduction facilities, and serving our people. But collective actions remain crucial. This only underscores the urgency for more collaboration at a regional level. We recognize the strategic role of the Caribbean Development Bank in mobilizing resources to support borrowing member countries, efforts to address the challenges they face. The bank's targeted and strategic financial support have enabled each of our countries to prepare customized development solutions paired with unparalleled technical expertise, and more importantly, aligned with our individual national development plan. Belize will continue to champion the bank as it works arduously to meet its role, mandate, and the expectations of its borrowing member countries. We will also continue to advocate for the bank among strategic partners and stakeholders. We acknowledge the ongoing effort of the bank to mobilize climate finance. We need the bank to advance its effort to provide affordable financing to our countries by pursuing blended finance. We wish to see the banks provide direct support to borrowing member countries to develop comprehensive climate adaptation projects and I say adaptation, not by mistake, and advance the mobilization of climate finance for loss and damage as negotiated at COP27. Mr. Chairman, thank you once again for convening us and leading this necessary conversation. And we thank the bank for being such an essential partner to our borrowing member countries. We trust the conversations had will be born of genuine regards for the countries we represent and the people we serve. Thank you for the opportunity to address this gathering, and may we forge stronger partnerships to advance the development interests of our borrowing countries. Thank you.
I now call on the Governor for Venezuela to speak on behalf of regional non-borrowing members.
Good morning. Acting Governor General of St. Lucia, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Errol Charles, Honorable Prime Ministers, Governors, Honorable President of the Caribbean Development Bank, representatives of the member states, representatives of the bank, and participants all to this 53rd annual meeting of the Board of Governors of this institution. With the certainty of the success that this meeting will generate, I wish to convey to you our fraternal greetings on behalf of the non-borrowing regional members. It is an honor for me to participate in this Board of Governors chaired by St. Lucia host country. We congratulate the Prime Minister, the Honorable Philippe Pierre, and his team for organizing and hosting this event. We also salute the work carried by the Honorable President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Ginny Leon, and we take the opportunity to thank him for visiting our country, Venezuela, in March of this year, hoping to deepen the presence and participation of Venezuela with this institution. From Venezuela, we believe that the CDB's approach for 2023, which will seek to focus on access to financing, is very relevant for the current economic situation, as it is a fundamental aspect of the development process in emerging economies. An obvious reality is that the global demand for financing is enormous at all levels and in all aspects, while the amount of monetary resources has always been limited. The reorientation of access to financing is a central issue in the current financial order, since developing countries require greater support from international financial institutions with the access criteria that not only measure indicators of economic income, but do not depend on subordination to the implementation of specific economic policies, and that can also address the vulnerability of these economies to external shocks, natural disasters, and variations in international markets, especially in the countries with the greatest difficulties. In response to the challenges facing the world today, we believe in the importance of the reconfiguration of the global economy toward a diversified and a multipolar one. Today's world is witnessing a breakdown in the traditional economic order, and it is in this regard we highlight the role played by emerging economies, mainly through their associations in cooperation blocs such as the BRICS, whose presence on the international scene is on the rise. The global monetary system is moving in a more inclusive direction with diverse payment arrangements. Hence, a new international financial mechanisms that give trade real freedom for expansion is pertinent. In this sense, the Bridgetown Initiative 2.0 could generate sufficient momentum and energy to enable the development of a new regional financial architecture, more inclusive for developing countries, more responsive to the current economic and financial challenges, with less preponderance on the conditionality and oriented toward ensuring the welfare of the people. Although we have faced strong economic and financial challenges in recent years, we can finally begin to leave behind the period of complexity that the COVID-19 pandemic entailed, whose economic aftermath we have not been yet able to overcome. Will we move forward in our efforts to resolve complex geopolitical scenarios, mitigate climate change, and address the food and energy needs of developing countries? It is our duty to emphasize that the willingness to work together as a region is a responsibility and must be our guiding principle. From Venezuela's point of view, our presence in the historical path toward development in the Caribbean region is undeniable. However, the imposition of illegal coercive measures unilaterally on my country, violating the principles of international law, not only have negative effects on our people, but the development initiatives that we have implemented with our brothers and sisters in the region that have been severely affected, presenting a negative scope on the regional level. We urge to remove the sanctions on Venezuela and Cuba. However, we reaffirm our willingness to continue working together with this institution and hand in hand with its member countries for the economic development and welfare of the peoples. Let us move forward for a new international economic order of justice, balance, inclusion, and compensation. Finally, Excellencies, allow me to convey to the Caribbean Development Bank our best wishes for another successful year, and to reiterate to all our Caribbean brothers and sisters that they can count on our friendly hand and the friendly hand of President Nicolas Maduro and the government of Venezuela to face the challenges and adversities on the road to develop a long and complex path that undoubtedly requires collective actions and a renewed leadership in the international concert. Thank you very much.
To speak on behalf of non-regional members, I call the Governor for Germany.
Honorable Governor, Prime Minister, and Excellencies, President Leon, distinguished governors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to deliver these remarks on behalf of Niels Annen, the Governor for Germany, for the group of non-regional, non-borrowing members of the CDB. Governor Annen was unable to join us today in person due to an urgent parliamentary commitment. First of all, please allow me to thank the government and the people of St. Lucia for hosting this annual meeting and the CDB team for all their hard work in organizing. The Caribbean region is facing a number of challenges today, which together are reducing the scope for sustainable development. Until the social consequences of the pandemic are overcome, we still have a long way to go. Economically, while tourism has rebounded and inflation has been curbed, it remains a key challenge compounded by rising interest rates and burdening levels of debt. So environmentally, the climate crisis is posing fundamental threats to the people of the Caribbean, most of all to the poorest and most vulnerable. As a consequence of climate change, the Caribbean is hit by natural disasters with ever-increasing frequency and intensity, causing significant damage and loss of life each year. Yet, I'm optimistic. The people and societies of the region are actively looking for answers to these challenges and building resilience. And the region has a lot of potential. This includes a well-educated population, an increasingly diversified economy, and an active civil society. Adequate and affordable finance for development, as the title of this meeting suggests, is one of the crucial enablers of sustainable development in the Caribbean. We also particularly welcome the focus on gender equality, youth, and indigenous people within the agenda of the annual meeting. In these challenging times, societies need to be more resilient against crisis. Strong international and multilateral cooperation can contribute. More investments are needed for the protection of the global climate and our natural resources. As part of ongoing reform processes in multilateral development banks, shareholders have been highlighting the need to provide and protect global public goods like climate, biodiversity, and pandemic prevention, and integrate them more deeply in the operations on the ground. In this regard, we invite management to explore opportunities to incentivize and leverage investments in the provision and protection of regional and global public goods in the Caribbean, focusing in particular on the immense impact of climate change. We welcomed the CDB's early work on addressing the recommendations of the G20 review on capital adequacy frameworks and look forward to further engagements in the board and at the level of governors. As a regional development bank, CDB is particularly well positioned to support borrowing member states in implementing their respective climate targets, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. As non-regional members, we also encourage CDB to continue and strengthen its efforts to implement the bank's climate targets and to fully align its operations with the Paris Agenda. In this context, robust disaster risk management remains an absolute necessity. CDB has also been critical in promoting resilient reconstruction in the wake of disasters, which is an important preventative contribution limiting the impact of future shocks. Finally, concerning CDB's risk profile, we would like to stress that in the interest of protecting current lending conditions and volumes for borrowing countries, the AA+ rating must be preserved, and in the medium term, we would like to see CDB return to being a AAA rated institution. We appreciate your regular updates to the board of directors and governors on the financial health of the bank. CDB is a key partner for non-regional member countries, including Germany, in the development cooperation with the Caribbean region, and CDB and the region can count on our continued support. Thank you.
I'll call on the Governor for Guyana to give the report. I nearly forgot the President. It's my distinct pleasure to invite the President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, to address us.
Good morning, all. Since we are in St. Lucia, I think I will deviate a little from protocol and start with a little bit of Creole. So, Monsieur Excellence, Député Gouverneur Général Cyril Errol Charles et Madame Anicia Charles, Monsieur Premier Ministre Philippe J. Pierre, Ministre Gouvernement Saint-Lucie, Gouverneur Banque Nou, diplomate l'autre pays et mon invité, Madame et Messieurs, et tout ça qui suivent nous ici sur Internet, ici pays et l'autre pays. Translated into good morning and welcome. Alors bonjour et bienvenue pour toutes. Bienvenue pour 53e réunion annuelle Banque Développement Caraïbes nous et qui a fait moi bien beaucoup plaisir aussi pour bienvenue toutes ici en pays natal moi Saint-Lucie Hélène Caraïbes là. So good morning and welcome to the 53rd annual meeting of the Caribbean Development Bank. And I'd like to welcome all of you here. It is a pleasure for the bank to host this meeting in the Helena of the West, my hometown of St. Lucia. The borrowing member countries of the Caribbean Development Bank today are being challenged like never before. The advent of a 1 in 100-year pandemic layered on existing economic and environmental vulnerabilities, plus the war in Ukraine, thrust the world into a period of geopolitical realignment, supply disruptions, food and energy insecurity, and volatile financial markets. These shocks led to sharp declines in output, eroded some of the socio-economic gains made in past years, and further slowed the region's progress towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. They have also contributed to rising debt levels, the erosion of fiscal space, and increased inequality and poverty levels. Equally concerning is the global trend towards fragmentation into distinct economic blocs with different ideologies, political systems, technology standards, cross-border payment systems, and reserve currencies. This potentially exposes the region to additional risks as fractures in the flow of capital, goods, services, and technology across borders could add to inflationary pressures, eliminate jobs, and deprive people of food, medicine, and other essentials. In other words, fragmentation could result in another supply-side shock, leading to sharper increases in prices and less output. These difficult circumstances have increased the development challenges in the region. To better address the challenges of BMCs, CDB recognized that it must reimagine its approach to development. We needed a paradigm shift. At the basic level, the shift began with our understanding of development. And in Creole, pour nous appli meilleur aider ces pays à qui même banque nous ka ni pour changer manière nous ka garder et comprendre concept développement et nous ni pour changer tête à pied. We have to turn things on its head if we are to understand how we take this forward. So at the bank, we pivoted our understanding of development to promote a holistic systems approach where productive and institutional capacity, environmental sustainability, social resilience, and financial affordability are seen as essential components of the evolution of the system. While implementation at a point in time may be specific, each part must be located within the systemic picture over time. In other words, we cannot leave any part behind. Your bank, CDB, was at the forefront of the regional effort to accelerate recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and supported programs for health, social resilience, and learning continuity in the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS. CDB, in partnership with CARICOM Secretariat and OECS Commission, developed the Let's RIP program to provide schools in the borrowing member countries with a roadmap to address the pandemic-related learning gaps and to increase inclusion. The RIP program provided certification training for 2,910 educators in Caribbean schools. We also strengthened special education training for 175 teachers in St. Lucia to better respond to varied student needs and to improve the quality of education. In 2022, total disbursements increased by 12.2% to $285.9 million US, comprising $180.7 million US in loans and $105 million US in grants. Behind these approvals and disbursement figures are human lives, which were positively affected as the bank worked closely with countries, communities, and development partners to develop on the SDGs. The bank also made strides with key projects in Suriname, Guyana, Bahamas, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Belize, and has expanded its partnership with member countries and development partners. Among these new partnerships is a soft loan of $50 million with the government of Italy for a program to support sustainable development projects in the Caribbean. Interventions are also underway to increase climate resilience, trade, and agriculture. Of note, are 14 million euros from the European Union to implement the Caribbean Action for Resilience Enhancement CARE program, and $9.9 million from the Adaptation Fund to implement the Building Resilience for Adaptation to Climate Change and Climate Variability in Agriculture in St. Lucia project, a long title. In the past year, the bank committed an estimated US $41 million of its own funds towards climate change initiatives, mainly in energy and infrastructure. The bank has also stepped up its level of ambition and adopted a climate finance target of 25 to 30% of its own resources towards climate change adaptation and mitigation by 2024. Up from 11% in 2021. We will continue to build on these achievements and deepen our ambition for the road ahead. In patois, nous allons continuer à construire ça nous a commencé bien et aussi faire ambition nous plus fort pour assurer succès à ce chemin devant nous. On the road ahead, we will do what it takes to ensure that we have and can continue the ambition that we have set ourselves. Meanwhile, we are cognizant of the fact that headwinds remain, as growth in the Caribbean is expected to moderate when tourism returns to pre-pandemic levels. Tighter global financial conditions could make it harder to finance fiscal deficits and roll over debt. Additionally, there are climate-related disasters that may cause large economic and social losses and weaken economic activity. Nevertheless, we will remain steadfast and single-minded in our aspiration to accelerate the pace of economic activity, close the gap to achieving the SDGs, and fundamentally alter the development path to place countries on a higher and more sustainable welfare path in the future by building internal resilience capacity. We can frame our thinking about building internal resilience capacity as a trilogy comprising, first, refining the international development paradigm, second, building partnerships, and third, strengthening policies. So the first part of the trilogy is refining the international development paradigm. We need to, in other words, measure better to target better. So let us therefore agree that the use of gross national product or gross national income as a proxy for development is insufficient. And therefore, our usual set of policies to grow GDP will also be insufficient. Let us agree that in a world with a multiplicity of shocks, sustainability remains a dream unless we can conquer resilience. Let us agree to advance the global development agenda by adopting beyond GDP measures like the UN's Multidimensional Vulnerability Index as our guideposts, and by extension, a broad GDP vulnerability and resilience policy tool to target improving internal resilience capacity of a country, and therefore, and thereby, its sustainable development. Many stakeholders are proposing specific institutional reforms to make international development assistance and climate finance architectures more suitable for the 21st century. A prominent example is the Bridgetown Initiative. To complement the Bridgetown Initiative, the CDB is exploring new and innovative ways to shape how concessional financial assistance is allocated, including through the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, or our Recovery Duration Adjuster Framework. Multilateral development banks, including the CDB, have also been recently designated as prescribed holders of special drawing rights by the International Monetary Fund, and can use these SDRs for loans, swaps, pledges in exchange for currency, or settling financial obligations, among other purposes. There are also efforts underway to establish a more robust architecture to address vulnerable countries' loss and damage needs, including through the Santiago Network and the new Loss and Damage Fund that the UNFCCC parties agreed to establish at COP27. The second part of the trilogy is partnerships. Accelerated sustainable development requires partnerships for development between the private sector, the government, and the international community. In fact, I have repeatedly said that sustainable development is too important for it to be the exclusive purview of governments. Let us agree, therefore, that we need to share to grow, sharing opportunities, sharing burdens, and sharing responsibilities. Partnerships should therefore take place at various levels. Partnerships among multilateral financial institutions. Why don't we use financial partnerships to effect scale lending along thematic lines, for example, a green just energy transition that goes beyond national and continental boundaries. Regional and external associates can also pursue partnerships in knowledge creation, sharing technology to improve productivity, global productivity, and focusing on national goals that can be effectively delivered through complementarities and synergies between the private and the public sectors, thereby helping to break the trust barriers that exist between public and private sectors, and unifying a focus on country prosperity. Partnerships can also occur in capacity building. For example, we can reimagine our learning systems and develop centers of excellence through using technology to bridge skills gaps across the Caribbean islands, particularly in new and emerging areas such as animation and gaming, robotics, digital media, and green engineering. This can expand skill sets and create jobs and business opportunities, particularly for the youth of our region, and help to mitigate some of the outward migration of our best and brightest young people. The third part of the trilogy is policies. We need policies and supporting instruments that are designed to drive fit-for-purpose investment activities, enhance implementation capacity for building resilience, and increasing access to adequate and affordable financing for investments. I want to focus on the financing aspect of those policies. It includes creating policies and designing instruments geared towards developing a resourcing ecosystem that provides liquidity for rescue, liquidity for recovery, and liquidity for repositioning based on need and not only on GDP. Examples of that infrastructure that I speak of include contingent disaster financing instruments. For example, a class of guarantees for financing the impact of natural hazards, contingent debt instruments to cushion the effect of an exogenous shock, instruments for mobilizing and intermediating private sector financing for development, revisiting debt sustainability frameworks to incorporate a wide class of debt clauses, exploring guarantees to enhance the quality of portfolios, and expanding insurance instruments to facilitate resilience. Let us agree, therefore, that we need a suite of instruments and affordable financing with appropriate governance frameworks to customize our varying needs and deliver on the promise of resilient prosperity for all of our citizens. CDB has a special role to play in navigating these challenging times. The bank will relentlessly pursue its ambitious agenda to build internal resilience capacity in our BMCs, using the triology of improving the international development paradigm, building partnerships, and strengthening policies. However, our efforts alone will not take us over the finish line. We request your continued and unwavering support as we are determined to introduce and execute novel and innovative approaches to support our membership. We will continue to demonstrate unmatched resilience and improved responsiveness as the region's development bank, as we remain true to our mandate of transforming Caribbean societies and committed to safeguarding the vision of resilient prosperity. The fate of the region and the bank are inextricably linked. When the region succeeds, the bank succeeds. It is therefore in our collective interest to work together. And in Creole, les banques là fait bien, nous toutes fait bien. Alors nous n'y pour travailler ensemble. Passer en l'été nous pour travailler ensemble. So let us act together and act now, because the moment is with us, and if we allow it not to happen, we will need to reflect in history why we did not do what we were called to do. Thank you.
There is strength in numbers. We can do this.
You have in the IDB group an entity committed to this concept of partnership with purpose for a stronger, more resilient and integrated Caribbean.
Our future awaits. Let's embrace it together.
The pathway to resilient prosperity is paved with sustainable partnership.
Together.
Thank you very much. I suggest that the president goes to Patois School. Anyhow, I want to thank the president for bringing our Creole to focus. And I want to invite you, if you want to learn Creole, you can do it for a small fee. It's my distinct pleasure to invite the chairperson of the governor for Guyana to give us a recount what happened at the Procedures Committee meeting. Governor for Guyana.
Morning, Chairman, Governors. The Procedures Committee met on Monday, June 19, 2023 at 4 p.m. And the report of this committee, dated June 20, 2023, is before you. I have the honor to table the report on behalf of the committee and move that the Board of Governors adopt the recommendations contained therein. Mr. Chairman, the Procedures Committee met at 4 p.m. on Monday, June 19, 2023. Representatives of Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Canada, China, Colombia, Germany, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Italy, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, and the United Kingdom. The committee submits the following report. 1. Schedule of the annual meeting. The committee recommends that the schedule of the meeting as set out in paper BG 53-1 be approved. 2. Provisions relating to the conduct of the meeting and the Procedures Committee, The committee recommends that the provisions relating to the conduct of the meeting of the Procedures Committee in paper BG 53-2 be approved. Agenda. The committee recommends the adoption of the agenda as circulated in paper BG 53-3. Regarding the items on the agenda, the committee reports on the following recommendations. A. Annual report for 2022. The submission to the governors of the annual report for 2022 was noted. Governors who wish to do so may comment on the annual report in their statements. B. Audited financial statements and reports of the independent auditors 2022. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, paper BG 53-4, and the audited financial statements and reports of the independent auditors contained in the annual report and resolved as follows. The audited financial statement be in respect of its ordinary capital resources, special development fund, and other special funds are approved. C. Allocation of the net income of the year ended December 31st, 2022. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, paper BG 53-5, entitled Allocation of Net Income, and resolved as follows. The net income of $21,188,000, being the operating income arising from the ordinary operations of the bank, are as reported in its statement of comprehensive income for the year ended December 31st, 2022, be allocated to the retained earnings and reserves of the bank. 2. The net income from the year ended December 31st, 2022, from its special operations relating to the general funds of $1,723,000, the contribution from the International Development Agency of $72,000, the contribution from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela of $3,000, and the contribution from the Agency Francis D. Development of $60,000 respectively, be allocated to the reserves of those resources to be used in any manner not inconsistent with the purpose and functions of the bank, any rules or regulations governing each such special funds and any agreement relating thereto. D. Administrative budget for the year ending December 31st, 2023. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, paper BG 53-6, entitled Administrative Budget for the year ending December 31st, 2023, and recommends that the governors note the budget. E. Expenses of the governors and alternates attending the meetings of the Board of Governors or committees thereof. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, paper BG 53-7, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Expenses of Governors and Alternates Attending Meetings of the Board of Governors or Committees thereof be adopted. Place and date of the 54th 2024 annual meeting. The committee considered the report of the Board of Directors, paper BG 53-8, and recommends that the draft resolution entitled Place and Date of 54th 2024 annual meeting be adopted. Elections of officers of the 54th annual meeting. The committee resolved that the governor for Canada be elected as the chairman and the governors for St. Kitts and Nevis, Columbia, and Columbia be elected as vice chairman. Any other business? The chairman will make reports to the Board of Governors. There being no other business, the Procedures Committee meeting ended at 4:45 p.m. Signed, Governor St. Lucia, Chairman, Dr. Tarchan Bargobin, Governor of the Corporate Republic of Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to bring this opening ceremony to an end. And could you stand for the departure of the Excellency, the Governor General? And after, could our governors remain for a family photo? Family photo, and this meeting, this opening ceremony has come to an end. Thank you very much. There are some refreshments on the outside. Remember, we have a meeting this afternoon. 1:40 lunch.
All the governors are with us, so we'll